All right, January 1st, 2021. Feels good to say that. Yeah. So we are finishing up a restorative week, and this restorative practice week is dedicated to reflecting and then looking forward also. So we'll do a very quieting restorative practice using a lot of wall contact. And then we'll finish up with a few more invigorating poses as the reclamation piece and kind of get us jazzed up for the coming year. So take your least dominant cross-legged position, since it's the first, and just take a few moments to adjust yourself to find your way into a very stable foundation. You feel aligned, you feel supported, you feel tall in your spine, the lower back is upright. And then take some time to press down somewhere to help the shoulders back, the chest to lift and spread, keeping the abdomen pulled in and the lower back long. And then joining the hands in front of the heart and closing the eyes. Observing your own breath as a way to just drop right into a present state of mind. Maybe observing the busyness of the mind, maybe observing sensation felt within. Finding a word or a phrase that resonates with you this morning, maybe for this practice, maybe for this day, maybe for the entire year. It's really up to you. And as you feel ready, bowing toward your own heart, releasing your hands, lifting your head, letting your eyes gently come open. And welcome. So we're going to begin in Supta Tadasana, reclining mountain pose, but we're going to come into it with bent knees so that we can get the flesh of the buttocks to pull away from the upper body. So we'll use the feet against the wall. And make sure you have head support if you need it. You could throw a blanket under your head. But like I said, you'll start with your knees bent, your feet to the wall, and you're going to come down. And as you push your feet into the wall, it pulls the flesh of the buttocks away from the upper back. It kind of lengthens you out in that lower back. And if you didn't get it on the first try, you might come up and just put your butt a little closer to the wall so that you get that nice amount of pressure into the feet and you feel the flesh pulling away from you, from your upper body. And then make sure your toes are pointing straight up the wall. Try to squeeze the backs of the legs into the floor. You can start with your arms at your sides, palms up, and just invite the shoulders to sink and settle into the floor. Tilt your chin toward your chest. Your legs should feel nice and active here. We're going to reach the arms overhead now, extending the arms alongside the ears. And try to really reach out through the fingertips, but without inviting the shoulders to follow. So keep the shoulders plugged into the trunk, the feet pressurized into the wall, especially the heels. Using the compaction of your front ribs to help the lower back sit down and the mid back sit down. And go ahead and sweep your arms down. We're going to draw the right leg toward the body with either the hands tucked under the thigh or over the shin. Try to keep some pressure of that left heel into the wall, but also be aware that you're not hiking your right hip. So attempt to roll the outer right hip down as you draw the right thigh closer to the trunk. And just stay with your breath here. If you were, I think most of us were here Monday, we do a lot of tension carrying and holding in the hips. So just be with your right hip space. You might notice if there's some resistance to how deep you can go here. And see if you can just invite a little more space, breath, openness, airiness into that hip. So we're going to kind of go through a bent knee version of the forehand to big toe poses. The bent knee version is a little bit milder, so it allows the body to surrender in a way that might not be possible with the fully extended leg. We're going to try to open the leg sideways, but I want you to try to keep your right thigh close to your trunk where it is now. And using just your right hand, you're going to start to allow the right leg to move out to the right. And it might be easy and available to use your right elbow as a prop on the floor so that you can really start to work the weight back to the left side body, finding that even imprint of your lower back on the floor. Meanwhile, giving a nice extension to the right inner thigh and a nice opening to the right hip space. Let your breath be full. Remember the diaphragm, and the full length of the diaphragm is from the pelvic floor all the way up to the soft palate at the roof of the mouth. So let your breath really be full capacity if you can. We're going to start to move the leg now and cross the body for Parabritha Paragustasana. So just begin to move the leg back to center. You can take hold with your other hand now, either underneath or over the shin. The hips will stack and you're going to roll onto the outer left foot. And then you can either just rest your right hand along your side waist, or you can unfold the arm completely perpendicular from the trunk. But we're still working with the bent knee here. And just feel how there's some interesting kind of places to observe in the body here. Of course, still with the right hip socket and joint, but also now the flesh and the fascia of the outer right hip is getting a big chance to kind of break up all that tension that is bound together there for a lot of us. When you're in these shapes, just remember those big breaths that really move through the shapes, like a window in a room that's been opened. You'll bring your leg back to center now, nice and slow. Right hand is going to hold the outer right knee. Left hand is going to hold the outer right ankle. And now check back in with your left leg and just really push the heel into the wall. Start to invite or rock the right shin from side to side. You can also invite it closer to your chest. But you just definitely want to make sure you're not feeling this in the knee, that you're accessing the hip and the rotation comes from the hip and not the knee. And if it is in the knee, you're going to need to back off, either moving the leg out wider or kind of not pulling on your ankle as much. Keeping the chin tilted down, just 3 more breaths here. And at the end of the next exhalation, we're going to take the leg straight up with the hands behind the thigh, low enough, close to the kind of the groin area that your shoulders settle down. They're not rounded off the floor. Find your straight leg and find the sole of the right foot really pushing up toward the ceiling. And then magically, when we bring the leg down, you're going to feel really good pressure of the right foot into the wall because we've now grown the length of the right leg. So you can begin to step down with the right foot, extend the right leg, and connect your right foot with the wall. And you'll feel good pressure there, nice reinforcement. And then once you have that, you're hugging the left leg toward you, either from the back of the thigh or the front of the shin. And be just as attentive to your right leg pushing into the wall as you are the softening of the left hip space. So have those two pieces working together. And just become interested in the response of the left hip. There's a great saying to replace any judgment you might have with just simple curiosity. We don't care really what the outcome is. We're just very curious. Let go of any attachment to the outcome. And for that matter, any aversion as well. At this point, the knee should still be only as wide as the hip, no wider, and just a couple more breaths. We talked about the siphoning off of tension in the body. That's just collected. It's not tension that we're really using intentionally anymore. So this is the first piece of this class. And now we'll carry that leg sideways, but try to keep the thigh where it is in space as far as how close it is to the torso. You're going to start to move the leg off to the side. You can unfold your right arm as some counterweight, or you can just keep the right hand resting on your hip point, which is a good reminder of anchoring there, or the side waist to help those side ribs stay toward the floor. Bringing that breath into your left upper inner thigh, bringing the breath to the full length of the diaphragm, pelvic floor to soft palate. If you didn't have a word or phrase come to you at the start of class, sometimes it just appears during your practice. So just kind of listening for what that kind of North Star would be for you. It could be just for today, this moment, this class, maybe the whole year. It's just a really nice time to start to consider things that might improve the quality of our lives, our days, our moments. So we're going to start to move the leg now to and through the midline for Parabritha Paragustasana. So you'll carry the leg back, you'll switch out your hands with the right supporting, the left arm either extending or draped over the side waist. You're going to stack your hips left over right. And you'll come to the outer edge of your right foot now. And again, either draping the hand to the side waist or extending that left arm out to the side. Your gaze is up or over to the left. Bringing nice deep breath to circulate around the outer left hip space. Every time you exhale, you detoxify. So if you're going to be intentional with your breath, sometimes it's really helpful to be intentional with the exhale, especially. And maybe become a bit more passive with the inhale. And from here, you can finish out an exhalation and use an inhale to start to guide yourself back onto your back. And you can prop or support the outer left knee with your left hand and the outer left ankle with your right hand. You might have that leg at an angle, that shin. You might be able to move that leg to a more level position where the ankle and knee are more level with each other. So just see what the hip will allow and make sure you're not rotating the knee. Might help to soften the hip space with a little rocking motion. Just kind of be attentive to what you need and what the body is telling you. Tilt the chin down and make sure you're just really giving some quality breath to this shape. We're going to be shooting the leg up now and grabbing behind the thigh with both hands in a way that your shoulders sit down. They're not curling off the floor. So drop the hands in nice and low, close to the floor. Find your straightest leg and flex the foot. Heel really pressing toward the ceiling, ball mounds toward the ceiling, toes pulled back toward the floor. Deep breaths. Good. And now slowly releasing the extended leg, touching down with the foot, release your hands, extend the leg to the wall, and just see about returning to Supta Tadasana momentarily. Feel the flesh of the butt pulling away from your torso. Feel maybe some energy vibrating in the legs. One teacher described it as being soaked in ginger ale. And then you can help yourself to either side. We're going to do a couple movements using the wall to open the spine, the chest, the shoulders, the arms. So we're going to be sitting next to the wall, and you can prop yourself on a blanket. And how you sit isn't necessarily a big piece of it. So you could choose a simple cross-legged position. You could choose a position where your feet are both moving off to one side away from the wall. And you want to be close enough to the wall. The first thing we're going to do is be turning toward the wall and kind of propping our hands at the wall. So you want to be close enough that you're not having to lean or reach or put the spine at a diagonal. We want an upright spine. So first thing to take care of is that you're comfortable with the seated position you've chosen. And then you're going to turn to the wall and just kind of tent up your fingers and use the support of pushing into that wall to help you gently turn the spine. Good. And now on an in-breath, you're just going to release out of it. We'll stay on this side so we don't have to switch our seated position a bunch of times. The next thing we're going to do is extend the arm up the wall. And we're going to come into what's called the wall clock. And so you'll begin with your hand at 12 o'clock. And we're going to start to crawl the fingertips back, but without the chest and shoulder following. So it's very easy to turn with that arm so that we avoid the opening opportunity here. So what your goal is just to crawl the fingers back, but attempt to keep the shoulder and chest forward. So don't be super concerned with how far the hand got, but do be more interested in the squaring of the shoulders and the hips. If you have a feeling of kind of being pinched, you can bend the elbow and just bring your hand down the wall. If the fully extended arm is kind of causing some pain or pinching, we don't want that. And as you start to open, we get a lot of contraction here in the chest and shoulder, especially in the winter months. As you start to open, you might be able to crawl the hand farther. So just pay attention to that, track your own edge. Straining your eyes or tensing the forehead is not part of this. So just relaxing the face, even close the eyes if that's helpful to you. And maybe a little bit farther, maybe not, but just the last 3 breaths here. And then you're going to start to creep the hand back to that 12 o'clock position. And then softening the elbow to bring the arm down. And we'll do one more thing, which is to sit a little bit farther, same side, but a little bit farther from the wall. Your arm will be perfectly extended so that just the fingertips kind of touch the wall. So you have to kind of measure your own distance. And now we're going to be kind of shifting on the buttocks to turn away from that arm. So just a repeat of what we just did. Arm extended straight out from the shoulder line, fingertips are in contact with the wall. Then you're going to kind of pivot on your butt until your body says stop. and you'll be there. And again, you can soften the elbow if you're feeling like this is too extreme. Soften your face, again, your eyes, your jaw. Make sure your posture is in good integrity. You're not pushing into the abdomen or overarching your low back. Stay over your sitting bones. And the next 3 breaths, just consider the quality of those breaths. Okay. And just start to pivot back on your butt, on your bottom. And I'm going to pretend I have a wall over here just so I can keep facing you. But we're going to do the very same 3 things. And if you need to pivot around away from camera, you can, because we all have our own kind of setup that we have to work with. And whatever seated position you chose, you'll just take the alternate seated position. So if it was cross-legged, change the crossing of your legs. We want to scoot closer to the wall for that first piece, which is the twist, where we tent up our fingertips and we turn the chest to the wall. And once you're seated and you've established that, you're going to turn, try to keep the spine straight up so you're not tilted toward the wall. You want to have a pretty much vertical spine, a book on your head is the idea. And every time you exhale, go a little bit deeper, wringing the spine. Every time you inhale, lift yourself up through the top of your head so that we do not collapse the length of the spine as we find more depth in the twist. Play with the pressure of the fingertips to articulate a deeper twist. Your gaze is soft and straight ahead. Your attention is pulled back inside your body. There's really nothing to see except that wall. So just draw the attention back inside. Last 2 exhales. And after that second exhalation, inhale for that length and come out of the twist. We'll do the wall clock. You can keep your distance from the wall and just put that arm up the wall until you're at 12 o'clock. Again, you can soften the elbow if the shoulder's uncomfortable here. You can even do this with the elbow directly in line with the shoulder for some of us that have injuries in the shoulder. And then you're just going to start to creep the hand back with the shoulder staying forward, finding your physical edge, breathing into it. We feel the expansion of the tissue across the chest, that horizontal space, opening of the shoulder, shoulders that like to curl forward to keep us warm. And just keep checking in, maybe creeping the hand a little bit farther back. Those deep intentional breaths. The shoulders should be square, right and left. It also shouldn't be more elevated than the non-active arm shoulder. We should have the shoulders level, front to back and side to side. And maybe creeping the hand a little farther, last couple of breaths. And then using an inhale, just start to crawl the hand back to that 12 o'clock position. And now we are going to lower the arm and adjust ourselves away from the wall slightly so we can do that arm that's parallel with the floor. So you might want to go into a cross-legged position if you weren't before. And you'll start sitting with your arm straight out in line, wrist and shoulder in line, fingertips touching the wall. So that's your perfect distance. And then you'll pivot on your buttocks, trying to keep the arm, the hand against the wall. And now you're getting a really nice big opening across the chest and in the shoulder tissue as well. I have to say it's a little bit harder here without the wall. So the fake wall is making this a little bit more energized for me, but stay with a few breaths here. Good. And then to release it, you'll just pivot back on your seat. Bring the arm down. Rest your hands on your legs or lap and just do a few shoulder rotations in both directions. So front to back and back to front. And when we do shoulder rolls, I always think of the image of carving something. So it's really even pressure as you rotate the shoulders around. And we're looking for smoothness rather than how big your range of motion is or how fast it is. And you might feel like a machine that needs oil. So just going with enough rotations in a slow enough, small enough way that you find that smoothness. And whatever direction you've been going in, you'll just stop for a moment and switch. You'll reverse, and you might rediscover that jerkiness again in the new direction. So just again, seeking out that smoothness, that fluidity. It's like you're giving yourself a little massage as the shoulder blades rotate around in the back body. Okay. You can finish up with your shoulder rotations, and we're going to come into a few versions of legs up the wall pose. So we will include a blanket support. Sometimes two is really nice. It just depends what's also important in this pose is that you get your butt really close to the wall. So you want to consider that as you build up your height. A bolster is another great prop here. If you have a bolster, you could put that horizontally up against the wall. So the best way into the pose to get the most closeness to the wall is to sit sideways with either hip against the wall. You're propped up on your hands, and then you're simultaneously trying to bring your legs up as you bring the torso down and revolve yourself 90 degrees to get your butt close to the wall. And if you didn't quite get that, it's maybe just going to be a process of scooting and adjusting till you do. Once you're there, though, it should be a happy place. Lower back is elevated and supported, the arms extended with palms up, and the legs, of course, running up the wall. And you're just going to bring a little bit of effort by imagining you're holding a paperback book on your soles of your feet. So you're flexing your feet ever so slightly and attempting to just kind of press the legs gently into the wall. Rock your head until your chin comes toward your chest. Close your eyes and just allow gravity to work the belly down with each exhale, to sink the belly down into the pelvic bowl, into the props, into the floor. This is one of the most effective poses for letting go of tension in multiple systems in the body. And it's just ironic because once you're in the pose, it's a pretty passive pose. So it's just wonderful to know that it has so much great effect on the body when you don't really have to strive for that. Your heart is getting a break from pumping as hard. Your brain is getting a fresh blood supply. Your legs are getting a break from gravity, weight bearing. Your exhale is supported to extend. This pose supports better mental health. It helps us to get out of that feeling of stuckness. And it's generally soothing to the nervous system. And it's also very easy if you have a bed, most of us do, to do in your bed, because most of us have our beds against at least one wall, if not two. Sometimes I put my butt on the pillows and I run my legs up the wall, and it's wonderful. So from here, we're going to come into bound angle shape with the legs. So you can start to bend the knees, let them fall out sideways, and drop the heels in toward the groins. And we have the advantage of gravity here, taking this pose to its depth. So we don't need to put a strap on the legs and hips and feet because gravity helps us take the heels in as close as they can go. But if you want a little extra for the hips, you can pressurize your knees if you want that. It's not necessary, but sometimes it feels good just to give a little pressure to the knees to encourage the elongation of the inner thighs and the groins. Continue to keep your chin tilted down. And continue to be interested in the quality of your breath. So throughout the practice, just notice where you're gripping. My mantra for the year, I chose one. It was hard. I had 3 front runners, but mine is simple solutions, because I have a tendency to make things more difficult than is necessary. And how that translates in yoga is sometimes we bring tension into our poses that really isn't needed. So simple solutions is my word of the year, although it's two words. Just 3 more breaths here. And checking in that hopefully you're enjoying this. If your mind has run away, it's usually a sign that you're doing too much or too little. We're going to go ahead and join the knees and run the legs back up the wall, but only so that we can come into Upavishta Konasana. The bound angle was first. Now we're coming into the wide angle. So you're going to start to move the heels out. Hopefully you have space here. I know Sylvia and Bernie might be crashing into each other. And that's not always a bad thing to have the legs contained in this pose. So if you are short on space or you feel a little bit unheld, you could strap your ankles and make the distance not as wide. So you'll still get a lot out of it, even if you're not at your widest. So just know that that's an option. But again, we have gravity helping us do this process of opening that we don't necessarily get when we do this pose seated or standing. So just enjoy that. You should feel a really nice elongation along the inner thighs. Give it your breath. And just a couple more breaths here. And now you're going to start to bring the heels back together. Bend your knees and help yourself slide down and off to the side. So you're going to come out of Viparita Karani, which is reverse process, legs up the wall pose. We're going to move those props out of the way. We're going to come to a little bit more distance away from the wall. So what we're looking for, and you might still need a blanket for your head. So just be aware that you're welcome to prop your head if it's slumping down. We want to make sure the forehead and chin are level. You're not having a chin poking up and a forehead tilting down. That's never a good position for most of the time. So here you can see I have my thigh bones vertical and my shin bones horizontal. That's what we're looking for, the 90-degree knee, and the feet are on the wall. And then from there, you're going to take your left leg and just straighten it out. So your left heel's against the wall. Prop your right ankle against your left thigh. So this is a figure 4 with wall support. And for some of us, you might need more than that. You can go back to bending your left knee and sliding the foot down the wall. And even there, you might want a little bit more. You could add the pressure of your right hand against your right knee. That's only if you need more. Again, chin is tilted down. You're funneling your breath into your right hip space. You're maybe also scanning your body to see if there's places that are just a little bit reluctant, resistant, not on board. Siphoning off that accumulated tension in the hips. The hips are kind of where we store our own sense of personal freedom. If we have a lot of tension there, we kind of feel very unfree. And we're almost through this side, but just to point out here for those of you that do home practice and like to know such things, you could go beyond and start to inch back toward the wall and come into a single-legged half lotus pose, where your one heel is kind of under your butt cheek and your other is above it. So you're in that cross-legged, but more lotus position. So that's just as you continue on with hip openers, it's just the next place to go from where we were. So you're gonna extend the right leg up now just to make sure the knee comes back into a nice stabilized alignment. And then as we set up for side two, just always remembering our hips are usually different. So you might need a different treatment. Go ahead and start with an extended right leg. Heel on the wall, prop your left ankle. And then from there, you might see about bending the right knee, sliding the foot back down the wall, taking a little bit more on in the left hip if you need that, and then maybe also adding that pressurized left hand to left inner knee. So the wall is a really good prop. We don't use it enough because, well, mostly because of Zoom. We used to use it more in the live classes, but it is such a good teacher and such a good prop. So it's really nice to incorporate in your practice on a regular basis. Notice how there's layers of tension to breathe through in the hip. Peel the hip back like an onion. You're going to stay here just a couple more breaths. And go ahead and release the hip opener piece and just send the leg up. Really tightening up the quadriceps and framing the knee with the support of the musculature that surrounds it. And then bring your foot back to the wall and help yourself roll to the side again, once again to come up. So now we're going to get into the piece where we're just taking on a little bit more of the intentional tension of kind of what is coming on the horizon for us, placing our energy in wise places. So we're going to do a few more poses that aren't as restorative. They're a little bit more demanding, not a lot though, just a little. So the first piece is we're going to do a wall boat, and the blanket is behind me. It's not under me. And it's like a stopper, because I don't want to roll back, and I definitely don't want to crash onto my tailbone. Remember, boat pose is really about staying over top of your sitting bones. And I'm recommending we do the boat pose today with bent knees, because it is quite extreme to do it with straight legs. That being said, that's your choice if you want to go into straight-legged boat. So what I have here is my blanket behind me, so I'm not going to roll back, and then my feet stepped up onto the wall. You can support yourself with your hands under your thighs as you roll your shoulders back and angle your torso back. And as you angle your torso back, make sure you did not roll back on your sitting bones. There's always dynamic action. and just a little bit of constriction in the pelvic floor. So shuttle the energy up the spine. Your skull should, of course, follow the spine. You shouldn't have your head closer to the wall. So keep your skull tracking with the spine. Your gaze is up because your torso is angled back. So it's just simple geometry. Your gaze is not straight ahead. It's slightly up the wall. And then extend the arms if you can. Otherwise, keep your hands supported. But extend the arms straight forward. Shoulders move back. The shoulder blades move forward. The breath is flowing. So we're in the pose, but can you find the repose in the pose? So we're turning the dial up on effort, but can you still keep your peace of mind, your presence? Tightening, corseting the stomach muscles so we're not pushing the abdomen. Keep the abdomen supporting the back. Keep the upper back supporting the chest. 3 more breaths. Good. And now slide your hands behind your thighs to help your feet come down. You're going to sit cross-legged with the blanket now pulled up underneath you. And I want you to just rest at the wall with your forearms as your pillow. You're in a seated forward bend with the wall supporting your arms and head. When you feel like you've rested sufficiently, we're going to do a little bit of a back bend with the blanket, padding the pelvis, and our blocks on each side of the mat for the forearms. So the setup is the blanket is giving your pelvis some support so it's not grinding into the floor uncomfortably. And your elbows are propped up in line with shoulders on your blocks. And just take a moment to rotate the outer thighs down, the inner thighs up, centering the thighs, make sure the feet are positioned slightly wider than the hips. And then take your tailbone into your blanket and your mat. Pushing the elbows into the blocks in a way that brings the shoulders down, and also driving the elbows back slightly in a way that brings the shoulder blades forward. You can certainly stay here. Otherwise, we're going to turn the dial up a notch and tent up the fingertips onto the wall and use the wall instead. I actually am on my full palms. Use the wall instead of the blocks to deepen your back bend. And this is not necessary. Like I said, you can continue on the blocks if that was right at your edge. Otherwise, you're pressurizing your hands against the wall and you're kind of pressing the hands or scrubbing them down to help you rise up and to help you spread and broaden the chest. And go back to gently bringing the chest down, the elbows to the blocks. And then join your hands and rest your forehead against your thumbs and take a few moments offsetting the upward energy of that pose. Just taking a moment to down-regulate, to catch the breath if it kind of became a little bit more ragged, which we never want, of course, but sometimes it does happen. All right, beautiful. So you can move the props out of the way. We're going to come into a wall bridge pose. And if you don't have success binding your hands in bridge with your arms extended and your hands down on the floor, you'll want to work with your strap because we definitely want a solid base with the upper body. And you're going to use the wall the way we just did with that 90-degree knee. So you'll have your shins parallel with the floor or ceiling and your thighs perpendicular. And then you'll either grab your strap in both hands so that your palms face up and your arms are extended and your hands are as wide as your shoulders, or you'll lift your hips and connect your hands right here, right now in the interlock. And then start to move the shoulders underneath you and lift your hips if you haven't already. Rocking the head to align the neck more closely with the floor. Clamping the knees in slightly so that you can broaden the sacrum and the pelvis. Taking the tailbone and curling it like a letter J into the body. Use the wall to bring a little bit more lift and height to the chest. With the eyes closed, looking toward your own cheeks. 5 more breaths. Relax the buttocks and roll the inner thighs down. 2 more breaths. And if you're using a clasping position, you can separate the hands, rock the shoulders out from under you, and now start to walk your spine down with a little bit of traction along the spine, so you're opening space between the vertebrae. And once your lower back comes down, drop it into the floor and restore your lumbar curve. Pull your thighs in toward your chest, one at a time. And then spread your arms out to each side. And we're going to do belly turning, but not for the abdomen strengthening, but for the twist. So on an exhale, move your knees to the side, to the right, and then pull up. And then down and back over. Next exhale, moving both knees to the left and up. So the knees kind of move in a semicircle. Or you can think about it as an L shape, but you don't need to have that sharp L elbow. You can have a nice soft elbow. And just do it enough times that you're getting the massage you need for your back to release that bridge pose, and you're getting the twist you need for your spine to feel supple and to put us in that down-regulated nervous system state. And when you feel like you've done that, just hug the legs in one more time, taking a reclining child's pose. And you're going to help yourself to either side. And now you're going to sit at the wall for pranayama today. We'll do a short seated pranayama. And you can use 1 or 2 blankets or even a bolster against the wall. We'll have our backs to the wall. And you also might need some support for your knees or hips or thighs. So you want to really make sure the base of the seated pose is comfortable, that you're not having to hold yourself there in a rigid way. You want to definitely feel supported. Sometimes we can use a vertical prop to run with the spine to keep the chest lifted and spread. But today, instead of doing that, I'm just going to help you try to place your hands on your thighs so your elbows come toward the wall. And you might even push your elbows into the wall to help you bring your chest forward. Drop your chin toward your chest, but also lift your chest toward your chin. Soften your cheeks, looking toward the cheeks with eyes closed. And we're just going to practice breathing in and imagining the chest rising, and breathing out and sinking the chin in toward that little pocket between your collarbones. And just another minute here. And when you can come to the end of the next exhalation, go ahead and lift your head, open your eyes, release your seated supported pranayama, and you'll set up quietly for Shavasana. Have your head away from the wall and have any support you need to quiet down the body, to give the body comfort. You might turn lights off or throw a blanket over you or tuck something behind your knees. Take some time arranging your setup. And once you're down on the floor, just take a moment, just like when we started class, to feel the flesh of the buttocks away from the upper body. You might even bend your knees and roll that flesh from the upper buttocks toward the lower buttocks. The feet are gonna fan out away from the hips, kind of turning out the toes. Be on the backs of your hands with the arms not in any contact with the torso. And do your best to look away from your brain. And just take the first few moments settling in with the physical body surrendered. You might slowly move your attention from your head, where all the sense organs, most of them reside. I kind of like to think about turning lights off in a house. Just quieting down the eyes, the lips, all the muscles that surround the lips. Softening and broadening the tongue all the way back to its root. Letting the teeth even relax into their gums. Surrendering the skin of your face from the forehead all the way to the chin. Relaxing outer ears and inner ears. Releasing the chain of the spine from the brainstem to the tailbone. Inviting the flesh of your legs to fall off the bones. Imagining the heaviest parts of your body releasing roots into the floor. And if the mind tends to wander, which for many of us it does when we are idle, you can take the mantra Soham, which means I am. You might breathe in and in your mind say so. And as you breathe out in your mind, say hum. Mantra means mind tool. Gives our mind something to do, which the mind is very much a fan of. Now we're going to start to draw ourselves out of the pose in a gentle way. Just start by deepening your breaths and maybe bringing very small movement to the outermost parts of your body, your toes, your fingers. Maybe your head will rock gently. Bending knees and elbows. Easing yourself to one side. When you get there, take a few moments with your hands acting like a pillow, resting on your side. And then pressurize your hands against the floor to help yourself up in a way that conserves your energy. Place yourself in a seated position. And we'll just take Janana Mudra, which is a hand position that directs energy and focus. And we'll take the Janana Mudra, which is a meditative mudra. So joining the fingertips of the index and thumbs, having the other three fingers extended out, and pressing the backs of your hands against your knees to help pull the chest forward. Close your eyes, look down, and just take a few moments with palms open and receiving, heart open and receiving, to acknowledge the effects of this practice and to just sit with yourself for a few more moments. Let's take a big breath in through the nose and try to empty that full breath out. And once you have, join your hands in front of the heart. Lift the corners of the mouth. From the place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. All right. Thank you all for joining me on this special New Year holiday. I look forward to many more classes with you guys this year and better days ahead. So take good care. We'll see you soon.